Hey guys and gals, it's Mrs. Henry here. Today's lesson is on introductions. So before we get started talking about introductions, I would like for you to go to Canvas, go to today's agenda, and check out the opening scene of Vertical Limit. Now, if you've never seen this movie, I think it came out in like the year 2000. If you've never seen this movie, I promise you that after watching this first 4 minutes, you're going to be interested. You're going to try to find it online so you can watch it. So pause me right now and go watch this clip. Okay, now that you're back, was I right? Do you want to watch the movie now? What happened to the brother and sister? What happened to their lives? There's 2 hours of a movie. We want to find out what's going on. So I want you to consider, if this had been written, if this first 4 minutes would have been in a story, how would that opening first few pages or whatever of the writing be written? And when you are thinking about writing your papers, it's like, I want you to try to recreate, to do what Vertical Limit does through a movie, but recreate that and build that suspense and bring in that description and tell kind of a story within your introduction. And I know that's a tall order. I know that's a challenging thing to do, but I want to show you a few things. So this is right here what we call a mentor text. It's just a text that is written well, and it models the type of writing that you want to try to emulate. So let's just read this together. And as we read, I want you to think about what Meredith Russo does to try to build interest and to engage her readers. So she says, "The bus smelled of mildew, machine oil, and sweat. As the suburban Atlanta sprawl disappeared behind us, I tapped my foot on the floor and chewed a lock of my newly long hair. A nagging voice reminded me that I was only a half an hour from home, that if I got off at the next stop and walked back to Smyrna, by sunset I could be in the comfort of my own bedroom, the familiar swell of Mom's starchy cooking in the air. She would hug me, and we would sit down and watch awful reality TV shows together, and she would fall asleep halfway through, and then nothing would change. But something had to change, because I had changed." Okay, so this is the opening paragraph from If I Was Your Girl. So let's take it sentence by sentence. The sentence that begins, it's not really talking about her at all. It talks about the bus, which is taking the focus on and putting it onto her surroundings. So then we get information about where she is. And this word choice, sprawl, gives us a visual of the city. She taps her feet. Why is she tapping? What connotation is attached to the word tapping? What are people feeling when they tap? What are reasons why people tap? And she's also chewing. So when people chew their hair, and I'm wondering, why is her hair newly long? What did she do to it? And what does that mean? If that's a detail she brings up here, maybe there's some significance to that. If she's tapping her feet and chewing on her hair, those are both things that are of people that show nervousness. Now, she doesn't say, "I was nervous." She shows us tapping feet and chewing her hair. A nagging voice reminded me, so she's bothered. A voice is like her inner voice is bothered. I'm a half an hour from home. If I get off here by sunset, I could be in the comfort of my own bedroom. So then the familiar swell. Swell is not a word that we usually associate with cooking, and neither is starchy. So those are fresh words that are unexpected to describe cooking. But this is a detail, a description that really gives us a clue on kind of how she feels about her home. Comfort. Comfort is a positively connotated word. And the smell of cooking. Starchy foods are generally comfort foods. And familiar, that's a positive tone word. And so she's giving us the sense of how she feels about home by the words that she chooses. She says that her mom would hug her, also a positively connotated like example. Sit down and watch awful reality TV shows, kind of like an indulgence, a guilty pleasure. Together, she would fall asleep halfway through and then nothing would change. And then she has these two sentences. In the English world, we talk about these being telegraphic sentences, basically meaning that they're short. So she's manipulating her syntax, like her sentence length, in order to kind of generate an emotion. So we don't know much right now, except for that she's headed somewhere away from home and she's nervous about it. And here she says something had to change, and I'm left wondering what needs to change. And she says she has changed, and we're left wondering why she changed. So just like the Vertical Limit opening scene, and this paragraph really gives us the buy-in that we want to keep on reading, at least to the next page. Now, if it gets dull from then maybe we'll stop. But if it continues on this trek, then we're invested. Now let's look conversely at what we're going to call an anti-mentor text. So let's read this. Abraham Lincoln once said, "We cannot escape history. Throughout human history, people have tried to escape from difficult circumstances. This goes on a lot in our society today. Sometimes these escapes might be positive, like taking vacations. Sometimes these escapes might be harmful, like checking out of reality by using drugs or alcohol. One time I tried to escape my own problems. It was a cold winter day, and it started with a phone call that a friend from 5th grade was ill. I knew I needed to go see her. All I needed was to convince my mom to let me ride the bus from Atlanta to Cincinnati alone." Okay, so there's the standard kind of hook, which isn't even necessarily bad in and of itself, but in a narration and when you're kind of trying to tell a story, perhaps it's not fitting to start with a quote. So this is a predictable beginning. And then when you have throughout human history, it's kind of an over like a generalization. Word choice, kind of bland and predictable word choice. And then there's some examples of sometimes these escapes might be positive. And then there's an example. Sometimes harmful. And then there's an example. It's not wrong. I mean, it's saying something new, but it's not what they're saying. It's how they're saying it. And then there's an attempt at narration. And we're going to talk about narration coming up this week some more. But when you think about the story that this is trying to tell and lead into, we have some very, very common descriptors. Whenever you're thinking about a winter day, it's always a cold winter day. Unlike this one that uses the word sprawl and nagging and starchy, those are fresh, unexpected word choices. And then, but cold in winter is pretty much how you always describe like a day that's in the winter. And it started with a phone call from a friend in 5th grade, who was ill. I need to see her, and this person has to get on a bus. But I'm not invested. It's not like Vertical Limit. I'm kind of okay if I don't find out about what happened with the 5th grader friend who's ill. And I'm not invested in knowing about this situation. And that has to do with the delivery. So here's some things. If you look down here, hold on. If you look down here, we've got conventional ways to start. And there are times when this is completely appropriate. And I have taught students to do these hook strategies before. Question, a definition, a quotation that kind of like fits within the theme of the message of the piece, a startling statistic. Those are conventional ways to start. It's what everybody's doing. And the reason why everybody's doing is because they get the job done. But if you're wanting to razzle dazzle, some interesting ways to start, what you can do are with narration or with a description. So imagery, using the 5 senses to kind of describe what's going on. And enigma, present a person or a thing that's puzzling, mysterious, or difficult to understand. It's this concept that you're giving puzzle pieces. You're not telling the whole story. You are giving little pieces that make the reader want to fill in the puzzle and figure out what's going on in the story. So some do's and don'ts about introductions. Don't delay. Get straight into it. Don't be overly vague or general. Don't say stuff like in today's society or throughout human history or through all the world or just over generalizations like that. But things you do need to do, dive right in. Do get straight to the point. So in media res is a Latin term meaning in the middle of things. In the middle of things. And if you think about it, some of the best introductions, some of the best movies have started after some action has already occurred. If you look at this opening, something has already happened to spur her on to leave and to get on this bus and just go. So we're kind of plopped right in the middle of it. And we're left wanting to know more about the situation. So maybe when you're thinking about telling your story or creating a beginning, maybe one of the best strategies might be to just pick an interesting spot in the story and start there, even if it's not the beginning. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've read personal essays or stories, and it begins with literally the first thing in the day, which is the alarm clock going off. And so there might have been a better, more interesting place to start that story that perhaps may not have been the beginning of the day, even though that day started with the alarm clock going off. So you have to think about what is an interesting point in the story to just plop your readers in right in the middle of things in media res. You can always go back and fill in the details, but find an interesting point to start, and that might just be the ticket to being writing a good introduction. Okay, so I hope this helped. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will talk to you soon.